There you go. Well, this is awesome. So my daughter saw the chocolates given out and she goes, I don't understand because you wouldn't want to eat those. They're so lovely. And I said, you don't understand chocolate. Before I start the actual talk, I would like to do something a little unusual. We're going to continue with the honoring for a second. Most of the time when we're going to honor somebody, we ask them to stand. I explicitly do not want you to stand, okay? I would like you to raise your hand if this applies to you and keep it up. If you don't participate, everything starts off badly, including the rest of my talk, so just work with me. Okay, if you are not a creator, if you're not yourself an artist or a writer or one of the kinds of arts that we talk about at LTUE, but you are a spouse, a parent, a child of one of those people, would you please raise your hand? Keep it up. I would like everybody else in this audience to please stand and clap for them. You could clap forever, not clap enough. You know what, I was talking to the lovely folks at my table, and I told them something I say often, which is authors in particular, and I think artists in general, are a weird mix of narcissism and cripplingly low self-esteem. Because we think we're going to do these things that will change the world, and we put them out there, and someone goes, that's wonderful, and you go, really? You know, and can I give you money to publish that? And it is because of the people who raised your hand that we are able to cope with the fights inside ourselves, that we're able to separate out the important voices from the ones that matter less. We as artists think of ourselves as people who create worlds. You as the people who support us are the ones who make our worlds worthwhile. And I thank you for that. So this is, now I'll do the top part, which is much harder because I have to sound wise. For those of you who have been at my panels, you will probably hear things that you've heard before. And this isn't because I'm lazy, it's because I have 3 or 4 smart things I've ever come up with in my life. And the secret to having an audience for me is to constantly find new readers that I can fool into think I know what I'm doing. And so I apologize if you've heard some of this before, suck it up. So what I'd like to talk about tonight is the most powerful people in the world. And I go and I talk at schools and at businesses, and I ask this question, who are the most powerful people in the world? And I hear prophets, I hear popes, I hear presidents, and I say no. And I sometimes hear men, and I say, boy, are you stupid. And sometimes I hear women, and I don't say that because I value my life. But that's incorrect also. Wait, don't beat me up. The most powerful people in the world are storytellers. Storytellers have a unique ability to take the world and make it make sense. And storytellers exist in every avenue of life. Storytellers exist, obviously, in people who tell stories with words, like me. Which I'm very grateful for. I'm married far above me. And the reason I did is because I was able to tell her the story of why I loved her. There are people who tell stories visually, with art, with movies, who tell stories with music. People who tell stories are magic. And we think of ourselves sometimes as, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller, I do beautiful art. Oh my gosh, that stuff in the hall, I just want to die. My stick figures look like they were drawn drawn by other stick figures who were drunk. Anyway, I marvel at these things. And we think that's the story, that's my job. I tell a story with my art. I tell a story with my dance. I tell a story with my music. And that's what I do as a storyteller. And that also is incorrect. That is a thing we do. But our job, the important thing we achieve as a storyteller, is to create community. If you think about what makes an American, people will say, oh, it's a citizen. But there are people who think of themselves as American-born citizens. It's someone born in the United States. No, there's lots of people who are born in military bases overseas who are American. The thing that makes us American, if you are, and if you're not, I apologize for excluding you. But the thing that makes us American is we agree on a set of stories. We agree on a set of tales, and sometimes they're not even true. George Washington, I cannot tell a lie. I cut down the cherry tree. And we hear that as kids and go, George Washington, what a fool, I totally would have lied. But we hear that story, and we love it, and we agree to it. And we have stories that we fight about, but as Americans, there is a core that we have agreed to. I'll give you another example of how powerful storytelling is in creating community. I have reached a point in my life where I have the potential to be deeply creepy. Not because I'm a horror writer, though I am, just because I'm a middle-aged man who looks vaguely threatening at all times. So, if I go to the Harry Potter movies, which I did, because that's the kind of threatening, manly man I am, and we're on movie 4, and I turn to the little 16-year-old girl beside me and I say, do you think Ron's gonna make it through the series? And she goes, I hope so. And then we talk for the next 30 minutes of the value of a Ron versus a Ronless world. And everything's fine. Now, same girl, same me. Carl's Jr. And I turn to her and say, should I get crisp cut fries or regular fries? In the same exact tone. And the same girl very reasonably takes a step back and prepares to call 911. I haven't changed. She hasn't changed. But there is no story about crisp cut fries versus regular fries. It's food, and we like it, but we don't have a shared language. We don't have a shared culture. We don't have a shared belief system that was woven for us by the storytellers who have told us stories that we agree are important and that we agree have value and that we agree should be told. Storytellers are so important, and we have to be good storytellers. And what makes a good storyteller? Now, whenever we're in high school, especially, someone says, here are the rules. You know, we all have English teachers. You can't start a sentence with a conjunction. But Shakespeare did. As soon as we're given a rule, we immediately, because storytellers are perverse jerks. And sometimes that can be a good thing. But we immediately find all the reasons we can, should, and indeed must break it, and so break the spirit of that horrible, horrible AP English teacher. I'm so glad I was never your teacher. There's people like, yeah, kill her! So we're constantly being contrarian and finding ways around the rules. And I've been doing this for a while, and these truly are rules that I do not believe you can break and hope to be a good and successful storyteller. The first one is confuse me and lose me. If you read a story, if you look at visual art, if you listen to music, and it is just a mess, a cacophony of chaos, you have no idea what you're looking at, no idea what its purpose is, and no idea why it should matter, that story will rightfully die in anonymity and ignominy. think I said that right. I write the words, I don't say them. You can't confuse people and expect them to come along for your story. Now, if you're a storyteller that has told stories to them before, or they get a sense from the way you're telling it that this is going someplace and it will make sense in the end, that's not confusion, that is putting faith in someone. And that's fine. You go, I trust that at the end, this will all make sense. But there has to be the sense of sense. Utter confusion is impossible. It is anathematic to a good story. The second one is bore me and die. Because we don't go to good stories expecting to hear exactly what we already know. That is DVD instructions. And we all know how popular those are, especially with men. Honey, I got a new gizmo. Here's the instructions. Testosterone. We assume that we already know it, and so are not going to waste time with it. It is boring. Now, sometimes lessons can be boring, but we still aren't bored on some fundamental level. Even if if the story is AP history or remedial math, which is more my speed, it's boring on one level, but I'm excited because if I get through this, I'll never have to do it again. Yeah. Boy, there's a lot of hostile ex-students here. Which makes sense, because if we were good at regular stuff, we'd have better paying jobs. I tell people when I write books because I failed miserably at every other possible thing, including quitting storytelling. I failed at failing. How bad is that? So we're not bored, at least on some level, and it's an important level. It can be current excitement. I love this movie. Oh, The Avengers. Personally, I thought it was really good, but I liked Mission Impossible better. I'm just saying. But we go and we're excited by these stories on a basic entertainment level. Or we're excited at a value or a benefit that it imparts, and so we put up with the kind of dull bits. So, 1, confuse me and lose me. 2, bore me and die. And 3, this is critical, to be a good story. Not just a story. A story is just a sequence of events. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end. A good story makes the world a better place. I agree. And sometimes making the world a better place doesn't involve teaching someone to change their world. Man, I went and saw the Mr. Rogers movie, and I felt like I should find the people who made it and pay them for therapy that day. I came out feeling wonderful, and then I went home and I had teenagers, and it all went away, but for a couple of minutes. I'm so glad my teenage daughter is laughing. She's like, I'm going to kill you later. We can have the world we can make the world a better place like that. We can directly teach people how to cope, how to be kinder, how to be more patient, how to love. Sometimes making the world a better place is just making people forget for a few hours that the real world exists. Sometimes it's just entertaining them, handing them a bag of popcorn and putting them in a dark room with fake people and letting them pretend that that matters for a couple of hours and leaving behind everything else that bothers them. And sometimes making the world a better place involves hurting them a little bit. Sometimes, in my books, everybody dies. And that's not just because she laughs, like I'm joking. And that's not because I'm horrible and I want to, just murder everybody. Sure, I have those days. All you people sitting in front, I bet you thought you were cool until the crazy guy showed up. Leap out and make a wallet out of your face skin. The reason I do it is not because I want to hurt characters, it's because sometimes the lesson that has to be learned is if we do these things, tragedy will occur. If we do these things, the nightmares become real. And I have to tell you that because you're doing these things. And I'm willing to hurt you a little bit so that you'll feel better and I'll make the world a better place. So, confuse me and lose me. Bore me and die. make the world a better place. The first two are critical. They're all critical. But the third one lasts. And so how do we do this third thing? How do we make the world a better place? Well, we entertain. We teach. And we are. We simply are. And by that I mean storytellers have a unique perspective. I did a TEDx talk last year, and as part of it, they handed all the speakers a swag bag, and inside was cloth. And so there was an article of clothing in there. And of course, what are you most likely to get as an article of clothing in a swag bag? A t-shirt. So I look down, and I see this beautiful kind of satiny black, it's just a folded kind of square, and I go, why are they giving me a kimono? Would I look good in a kimono? I think I could pull off a kimono. And I mean, I was really invested in this kimono tale that I was telling us. It never even crossed my mind that it might be, a frickin' shirt. And I pull it out and I'm like, oh, it's a shirt. I mean, I guess that's good. I can live without the kimono thing. I really kind of planned an event around the first wearing of the kimono. I wish it was like, so I wear a shirt. Okay, try not to show the disappointment at the lack of kimono. And yes, part of that is because I'm stupid. Part of that is because I look at things differently than anybody else. And those are the stories that I can tell, that no one else can tell. We tell stories by who we are. And when I asked that first question about who's not a creator, who supports them, it was a bit of a lie, because we all are. We all tell stories. We tell them directly, hey, come sit down, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to scare you, I'm going to excite you, I'm going to make you cry, I'm going to make you laugh, I'm going to make you fall in love, because I'm going to tell you words that I'm going to make sense of the world with. I'm going to tell you a story. But the stories we tell also exist in how we treat each other, in how we interact with those around us. The greatest stories I have ever heard were not from my father, who was a professional storyteller. They were from my mother, as she tucked me in at night. We tell stories that matter, and we tell them to our children. We tell those stories that matter most in the hopes that they will go on and become better than us, because the best stories are the ones that become obsolete as they are surpassed by those we tell them to. I am proud to be a storyteller. I am proud that I have never met a single person in my life who did not have a story to tell. People are miracles. Whether you believe in God, whether you don't believe in God, a miracle is just something that exists that simply shouldn't. And people are those miracles. I have never met somebody without a story to tell that was worth hearing and worth learning from. There are people who are not exciting, and we go, oh no, that boring person, crud. But if you sit with them for long enough and you come to understand them, you realize that this boring person is not a boring person. They're sort of a blog cover to an extraordinary adventure. And I know I am sad when someone doesn't buy my book because the cover isn't as exciting as they want it to be. People are extraordinary adventures. People are miracles. And the storytellers have the privilege, the opportunity, the blessing, and the responsibility of creating the community of our world. And so I thank you for letting me be part of this community. I invite you to go forth and don't be boring and don't be confusing and make the world a better place.